Welcome to lesson 46 of Algebraic Concepts, Pythagorean Theorem, Part 1. This may seem geometrical, but since it's dealing with solving equations primarily, I will include this here. So here's our objective, some vocabulary, and rules and notes. Please pause through these things and take the time to read them on your own. Okay. So this is basically what Pythagorean's theorem is. If you have two squares, A and B, and you line them up at right angles to each other, the longest side, the side opposite the 90-degree angle, will form another square. So you can think about it like that, and that's why we call them squares, because when you multiply a length times itself, you get a square measurement. All right, so here are the parts of a triangle. So leg A is sometimes called the altitude, sometimes called the height, and sometimes called other things, but we'll just say leg A, and then leg B will be the base, or the part on the floor. The altitude and the base intersect at right angles, so right here. And whenever you see this square, you're dealing with a right angle, which means it's 90 degrees. And the hypotenuse is always opposite the right angle. And the hypotenuse will be your longest leg on a right triangle. And we're dealing with right triangles. That means a triangle that has a 190-degree angle. Okay, there's the formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. The square of A plus the square of B will equal the square of the hypotenuse. And we saw that with the pictures of the squares. Okay, so let's deal with our first example. A television screen measures 15 inches across the bottom. That means across the bottom is 15 inches. And 20 inches along the diagonal. The diagonal is a length on an angle. That's what a diagonal is. So this is 20. And now we need to know what A is. We'll call this A, not A squared. So we have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And so now we want to find the missing length, which is the altitude. And so A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We're going to substitute using parentheses. And I put 15 in for the B because that represents the base. A squared plus 225 equals 400. Subtract 225 from both sides. A squared equals 175. Okay. So now, this is why we went over radical equations. You know that the opposite of a square is the square root. So if we take the square root of this side and the square root of that side, we know that we will get A. And since 175 is not a perfect number, the closest number to 175 is 13 squared is 169, 14 squared is 196. So somewhere in between there. So we're going to be somewhere in between 13 and 14. And since we're in high school, we're going to round to the 1,000th place because we haven't been told what to round to. You typed it in the calculator. You turn your thing to the side, and you hit square root, clear, 175, square root, 13.229. We're going to round to the 1,000th place in high school. Starting at the 9th grade, we're going to round to three numbers behind the decimal. Okay, so this is a different thing. So find out whether these lengths make a right triangle. And we know that on a right triangle, our longest side has to be c. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Is this true? So does 14 squared plus 15 squared equal 16 squared? Okay, so we just calculate. All right, 14 squared is 196, 15 squared is 225, and 16 squared is 256. And we can see that these added together are bigger. Doesn't matter what the math is. I'll do the math for you. But since this is bigger, this does not make a right triangle. All right, so 6 and 5 is 1, 9 and 2 is 1, plus 1 is 2, 4, 421. So we would need a length at least 421 units to make a right triangle if the legs are 14 and 15, whatever units long. Example 3, find the length of the missing side. So this is just a straight plug-in. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So you got to substitute using parentheses. So you keep your sign straight. Check out my calculator. I don't know where I put it. Equals 4225 is c squared. This is not the length of the missing side. This is the length of the side squared. So now that we find a square, we have to undo it by taking the square root. The square root of anything squared is c, and then we take the square root of that, and we get 65. 65 units is the length of the missing side. Okay, so those were our examples. Try the practice problems, and I will see you at the end of this video. Okay, so read through the problem. the side of a right triangle measures 6 inches and 8 inches. How long is the hypotenuse? Well, the first thing you're going to do is draw a figure. So we got 6 and 8, and they don't tell you which side is which, so it doesn't really make a difference. And they want to know how long is the hypotenuse. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Substitute 8. Well, why did I pick 8 for A? A is the altitude. That is my up and down, my vertical. B is my base. That is flat. And that's why I chose that. So a squared is 64 plus 6 squared is 36 equals c squared. 64 and 36 make 100 equals c squared. Take the square root, c equals 10. Okay, so the length of the hypotenuse is 10 inches. And make sure you put your units in, 10 inches. Determine if these lengths make a right triangle. So, just like in before. So you get 30 squared plus 40 squared should equals 50 squared. Now put everything in parentheses. Well, when you're dealing with lengths, you won't really deal with negatives because you cannot have a negative length. So 30 squared is 900 plus 1600 equals 2500. And 9 and 16 make 2500 equals 2500. So the answer is yes, you do have a triangle. Yes. Find the length of the missing side. Okay, so we're given a triangle. We're given B is 100 and C is 150. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared. You're given 100 squared and 150 squared equals A squared. So A squared plus 100 squared should be 10,000. And 150 squared should be what? 30,000? 22,500 equals 22,500. Okay, subtract 10,000 from both sides. Subtract 10,000 from both sides. A squared equals 12,500. Take the square root of both sides. So you get A, because that's what we're looking for. $111.803. Because we're rounding to the third decimal, to the third number to the right of the decimal, which is called the thousandth place. Your math teacher or somebody will instruct you what to round to, but if nobody does and you're in the 9th grade, round to no more than 3 numbers behind the decimal. And that is our lesson on Pythagorean Theorem Part 1. I will see you on the next video. If you like what you saw, please subscribe and share this video with other people.